You can now pay for an Uber ride with cash. This is kind of interesting. Let's look at this. So people in Los Angeles, and I believe San Francisco as well, can now pay for rides with cash. This is something that I can see them like rolling out more and more. But this initiative is a part of a broader effort to expand payment options and make rides more accessible. And I guess I can see that because they said here, we believe transportation should open doors for everyone. Yet the truth is that not everyone has access to a bank account or credit card. And some riders simply prefer to pay with cash. That's why we're introducing a cash payment option to make rides more accessible while giving drivers even more ways to earn. And I am kind of curious to see how it's going to affect drivers, let's say here in LA, for example, because as it says here, the option is limited to verified drivers, and only drivers with strong feedback can accept cash tips. Drivers may opt out at any time. They have piloted earlier this year in Dallas, Orlando, San Antonio, etc., and has since expanded to other cities. Here's how it works, and this is where I think it's kind of interesting because I feel like there's both pros and cons to this, like anything. Eligible riders can select cash and their payment method when booking a trip. Drivers can see the request marked cash along with standard details such as estimated earnings, the rider's name and verification badge, so kind of standard. But you're seeing that as opposed to like say all the typical stuff, there's a note saying, hey, this person is paying with cash. Drivers may opt out of accepting cash rides. At the end of the trip, riders hand cash directly to the driver. The driver then enters the payment amount into the app, and the ride is marked complete. Of course, Uber said that all its standard safety functions, GPS tracking, ride check crash detection, emergency assistance, and options for riders and drivers to record audio or video during the trips will remain in place for cash rides. So same thing as a typical Uber ride, except they're paying with cash. And I have to be honest, I feel a bit mixed about this. Let me know what you think in the comments. You can be honest, because on one end, I do agree with them that not everybody has a credit card. Like say your wallet gets stolen. Not everybody has maybe easy access to a phone to pay for Venmo or with Venmo, or let's say having a bank account, right? So cash and paying with cash does open up bigger options for people. On the other end though, I remember when Uber and Lyft first came out. This is like, over a decade ago. And I remember that one thing that I heard about that Uber and Lyft really tried to pioneer is the idea of it being a cashless transaction. Not in the sense of you not necessarily paying with cash per se, but more the concept that the payment happened behind the scenes. That, if you think about it, and this is something that I think a lot of people forget. If I have to get a beer at a bar, I have to, pay for it and do the whole thing. If I'm getting a taxi, I pay for it at the end. If I'm going to a restaurant, I pay. If I'm doing anything, pretty much almost anything in life, the payment aspect happens right in front of you in your very own eyes. But I remember with Uber and Lyft, one advantage they mentioned about their apps and taking a rideshare and everything was that things actually happen behind the scenes. You'd get in the car, the driver drive you and drop you off. The driver knew they were getting money from the trip. You knew that you were paying for it, but there's almost this unique kind of limbo area where during that ride, you didn't have to have payment type conversations. And I do wonder how this will affect future rides that do happen with cash. Because I can see some drivers saying, hey, I actually like this. Like, I get the cash, I get to hold on to it, and Uber takes their cut automatically through the app, so the cash that I get is mine. Maybe you get cash tips and all this kind of stuff. So I can see some drivers liking that. On the other end, I could see it being a bit tricky. Like, what happens if someone just runs out of the car? I mean, I doubt that would happen, but you never know. In addition, I also wonder, does that mean now I have to have cash on me? Because let's say the ride's, I don't know, I'm making this up. Let's say the ride's $15 and someone has a 20 on them. And let's say they still want to tip me, which I'll talk about in a second, 20%. That means technically the ride's $18, right? On average. Does that mean the person gave me the full 20? Because I can see a lot of people saying, hey, well, ride's $15, 20%. I'm going to give them a $3 tip. So I can see someone giving me a 20 and be like, hey, give me $2 back. But if I don't have that cash on me, what do you do then? Does this mean Uber drivers now have to have a bunch of ones on them or a bunch of cash available in order to kind of make change and everything? And then lastly, tipping. This is one thing that I actually think will become an advantage for the driver, because like I've talked about in so many videos, Uber and Lyft drivers and rideshare drivers in general don't get tipped the way they should be. We all know this. And I think one aspect and one reason why is that once someone leaves that Uber or that Lyft, they're not obligated to have to tip, right? Like if you go to a restaurant, you have to deal with the payment right then and there before you leave. If you go to a bar, you have to do the payment right then and there before you leave. This is true in almost every instance of tipping. On the flip side, for example, delivery driving, you tip before the food even gets there, right? So in almost every instance of society that does involve tipping, you can't really tip afterwards, if that makes sense. And I think that's why Uber and Lyft drivers don't really get a lot of tips, is because someone leaves the car and they're like, oh, well, I'm not under any pressure to tip them. I already left the vehicle. If I don't tip them, nothing bad happens to me, right? And I think that's what makes it very unfortunate. In this instance, though, how's that going to turn out? Like, if let's say the ride, again, was $15, and I hand the Uber driver a 20, and I say, give me 5 back, now the Uber driver knows, well, they're not tipping me, and maybe this will cause, hopefully, with these cash rides, maybe will cause more tips, because now as the passenger, you can't really tip after the ride. Maybe Ubers will have a tipping option within the app. I'm kind of curious how they're going to kind of combine that whole function, but I think for a lot of people, I can see them either A, giving you tips, but also, who knows, I can see some people being like, hey, the ride was $15, here's a 20, give me 5 back, and I can see some people saying the classic line, I'll tip you in the app. Let me tip you in the app. And as a driver, you're like, oh, okay, right? But this is an interesting thing. Let me know what you think in the comments. If it's a good thing, a bad thing. I hope it is good. I think this is, something that might open up, especially on the passenger's end, the ability for a lot of people to take Ubers and Lyfts. But we'll have to see as time goes on.